listen in live.
We are, it looks like, going to be able to process the USMCA here in the Senate this week. That'll be good news for the Senate and for the country, and something I think we have broad bipartisan agreement on. With regard to impeachment, our understanding is, and I think your understanding is as well, is the House is likely to finally send the articles over to us tomorrow. And we'll be able to, we believe, if that happens, in all likelihood, go through some preliminary steps here this week, which could well include the Chief Justice coming over and swearing in members of the Senate and some other kind of housekeeping measures. We hope to be able to achieve that by consent, which would set us up to begin the actual trial next Tuesday. So that's sort of the week ahead and the early part of next week as it looks possible as of right now, and I think that's likely to hold up.
As the leader pointed out, we're at long last going to get the articles of impeachment from the House of Representatives. I think it's safe to say that this is the most rushed, most biased, and most partisan impeachment process in history. And of course, we were told at the outset, as the House was rushing through this, that there was a real sense of urgency. They had to get this done because there was, so important that we get this over to the Senate and get it voted on and attempt to remove the president from office. But clearly, after the Speaker now having sat on it for nearly a month, it's clear that all along this has been a partisan exercise on the part of the Democrats in an attempt to overturn a presidential election. And we're going to do our constitutional duty here. Obviously, we will take what they send us and, as the leader pointed out, process it. But I would certainly hope that in the future that impeachment is reserved for what I think the founders intended, and that is a serious remedy for serious crimes and not something that would be used as a political weapon. But we'll get the process underway and follow the outline that the leader laid out in terms of the organizing resolution, and hopefully get this behind us and back to work for the American people, which is what I think most Americans would like to see and expect us to be doing here in the Senate.
Well, Speaker Pelosi seems to have her pollsters working overtime. She's always looking for poll-tested phrases. They had quid pro quo for a while. Before Christmas, the poll-tested word was urgency, and now she has changed that. On the Sunday show last week, 3 different times she said cover-up. The American people know that if there has been a cover-up, it has been by the Democrats in the House. They have been obsessed with impeaching President Trump from day one. The Speaker has said that they've been at it for 2.5 years. Well, the phone call with the President of Ukraine didn't happen until last July. And in terms of being an unfair process in the House and the cover-up there, they're the ones that held their secret meetings behind closed doors in the basement of the Capitol. They are the ones that prevented due process for the president. They're the ones that have selectively leaked misleading information about the process, and they're the ones that first said the whistleblower would testify and then said the whistleblower would not testify. So to this point, the Harvard-Harris poll last week said only 1 in 3 Americans, only 1 in 3, believe the process in the House was fair and even-handed. Only 1 in 3. The process in the House, it was rushed, it was partisan, and it was sloppy. Justice is going to be done, and it's going to occur in the Senate.
Well, we do want to have a fair process in the Senate. Several people asked yesterday about the motion to dismiss and whether there should be one early. My view then and now was that this process needs to be a process where everybody is heard, and that the person who would benefit the most from everybody being heard is the president. He hasn't had a chance to make his case. He'll have that chance in the Senate. The Senate owes that to him. And I think the Congress owes that to the country, that we can't just have a one-sided process that suddenly ends, but a process to where everybody gets a chance to be heard. We've heard a lot from the House. We've particularly heard a lot from the House about how urgent this all was until the last month, when apparently it wasn't urgent at all. But my view is this will be the first chance that the president's had to make his case. He deserves that. The American people deserve a chance to hear the other side of this, which they haven't heard up until now.
This past weekend, I kicked off my 6th annual 99-county tour in Iowa, and my first county stop was in my hometown of Red Oak, where I did an agricultural roundtable. And no surprise there, folks, everybody wanted to know where we were with the USMCA. And so I was proud to report to them that we were taking it up in committees in the Senate, actually doing the work that people expect us to do. And thanks to Dr. Barrasso, this morning we moved out of EPW, the USMCA, which is really great. And I'm glad. Our farmers and ranchers expect us to move on this. And so I am hopeful that we'll be able to take it up on the full Senate floor later this week. But oddly enough, people, when we were having that discussion with those farmers, the only questions that came up about impeachment was, will it delay us passing the USMCA? Okay, so folks back home, they don't care what's going on in this bubble surrounding impeachment. They just simply want to know, are we doing the work that is important to them? Things like transportation, USMCA, are we funding the military appropriately? Those are the things that folks back home really care about, and that's what we should be focusing on. So I am excited that we are moving on USMCA. I will be so thankful to have that out of the Senate and onto the president's desk, and then hopefully be able to move beyond impeachment and really focus on the people's business of impacting their daily lives.
Well, Friday's jobs report provided some more good news for the people of Indiana and all across America. Let me read just some brief numbers here. The unemployment rate held steady at 3.5% in December. 145,000 new jobs were added. Wages continued to grow and are up nearly 3% from a year ago. Folks, this is what the American people want us to work on. This is where this Republican-controlled Senate, working with this president, have been focused intently ever since we were sworn in. The economic policies that we have been championing have been working, whether it's tax reform or deregulation. We need to continue this momentum, and just this week we'll advance the USMCA through the Senate. It's my understanding that the president will be signing on to phase 1 of the trade negotiations with China, and these trade agreements will complement all the other great work that we've done on behalf of the American people.
Yeah, let me just add one thing before going to your questions. I announced last Tuesday that all 53 of us in our conference had agreed on an initial resolution about how to go forward. That remains the case. All 53 of us have reached an understanding very, very similar to the one that was achieved at the beginning of the Clinton impeachment trial, 100-0, that would set up the arguments by the parties, the prosecutors and the defense, and then a written question period, and then after that, the more contentious issue of witnesses would be addressed by the Senate.
Leader McConnell,
Yeah.
on the Russian hack of Burisma, what concern do you have about what role Russia may try to play in the presidential elections this year? And also, Democrats have obviously advocated for moving election security legislation here. Does this change your view on trying to move that because of the concern about what happened with Burisma?
Well, we certainly are concerned about election security. That's why we've appropriated $800 million over the last couple of years to deal with it. I do want to congratulate the current administration on the efforts both in 18 and there were off-year elections in 19, from which we have essentially no reports of any kind of success. So we need to keep our eye on the Russians or anybody else who's trying to mess with our election system and we're appropriating plenty of money to do just that.
Some in your conference have suggested that if Democrats are calling witnesses like John Bolton, they may also want to call witnesses such as Hunter Biden. Would you support calling Hunter Biden?
Well, I think we'll be dealing with the witness issue at the appropriate time into the trial. And I think it's certainly appropriate to point out that both sides would want to call witnesses that they wanted to hear from. So when you get to that issue, I can't imagine that only the witnesses that our Democratic colleagues would want to call would be called.
The president has suggested that you should just move to dismiss. You clearly want to get this over sooner rather than later. Why not push to try and dismiss?
Yeah, there is little or no sentiment in the Republican conference for a motion to dismiss. Our members feel that we have an obligation to listen to the arguments, and we've laid out in this resolution an opportunity for everybody to sit there. Remember, senators can't say anything, so they'll have to sit there and listen. To listen carefully to the arguments by both the prosecution and the defense, to follow that up with written questions submitted through the Chief Justice. And that means listening to the case, not dismissing the case. Yeah.
Can there be a fair trial if there are no witnesses?
Well, you know, if you look at the House product, you really got to wonder what the definition of a fair trial is. They did almost nothing that you would expect the House to do in order to set up this case to be considered by the Senate. And with regard to what witnesses are necessary, we're going to vote on that at the appropriate time after we listen to the arguments.
And would the White House be able to block those witnesses?
51 senators will decide who to call. After that, who knows who will employ what kind of legal devices? I have no idea. So in spite of your very best efforts to fast forward this to that moment, we can't go there yet. So we'll just have to wait and see what the feeling of the Senate is after listening to the arguments and the period of written questions.
Leader McConnell, when are you going to debate and vote on the organizing resolution, and when will you reveal what the resolution will look like?
Well, I think that would come up appropriately next Tuesday, and that's when the vote would occur. That is, assuming we're on the trial next Tuesday, and I think that's the case.
Showing what the document is. Thank you.
All right, everybody, there you have it. Mitch McConnell talking about the week ahead, believing that the Senate, well, they'll get the articles of impeachment and begin the trial process a week from today, next Tuesday. You saw it live right here on Fox News Now. Meanwhile, here is